I'm amazed, though, with all the jockeying I mentioned that went on all season long, that 9 of the 10 scouts you spoke to had him at number 1. What set him apart in the end?
I think it's vision. Ultimately, elite-level vision, playmaking ability. When you've got a player whose mind and his hands and his feet all move at the same speed, and that speed is extremely high, you've got somebody who has a chance to make everybody else on the ice better. He elevates the play of all the players on the ice because he can find those players. But if he needs to do it himself, he can do that. He scored the one goal to lead Canada over the United States at the Ivan Holinka tournament, the under-18 tournament last summer. So he can be a game-breaking goal scorer, but he's got elite vision, elite playmaking skills. And even though he's not the biggest guy in the world, just a shade over 6 feet, and he's putting weight on, he's in the 170-pound range now, he's a guy who very rarely, he's got Gretzky-like ability to avoid being ever hit head-on by the bigger guys, and he's able to dance around them.
Minor hockey phenom. He was number 1 in the WHL Bantam draft a few years ago, led the WHL with 75 assists in this past season. And if he goes first overall, he'll be the 4th straight Canadian to do that. Stamkos, Tavares, Hall, and will it be Nugent Hopkins? Bob's number 1 ranked player has gone number 1 7 straight years.
Larson, number 5. Keep an eye on him. Larson, 6'2", over 200 pounds already. A lot of people think he'll be one of the first 2 players picked. Good composure, plays staying out of traffic. Back for Larson. Larson, a lot of scouts see him having the brain of Miklas and the physical dimension of Al Sanderson. When he has to do it defensively, he gets right into the shooting lane. Tremendous player.
I remember when we were at the World Juniors in Buffalo, and there were some questions about Larson that seemed to have emerged in the fall, but he looked really good. Is he NHL ready?
He is NHL ready, and he wants to play in the National Hockey League. And if that means he has to play in the American Hockey League, he's fine with that too. He's a big, strong defenseman. He's not a pure offensive defenseman in terms of putting up huge numbers, and he's not an absolutely punishing physical player that's going to, kill you a la Scott Stevens. But he has an amazing blend of being able to skate and move a puck and join the offense, more of a second power play type guy. And he's also got a great stick, and he can't play the Nick Lidstrom one-on-one game where he's very difficult to beat. He's played in the Swedish Elite League. He's played against men for the last couple of years, and he's logged big minutes. And he helped lead his team on a very young defense to the Swedish Elite League Championship. They lost in the final when it was all said and done. But when Steve Tambellini was there to see him play, he logged big minutes, and the ability to play big minutes against men at this age, he is NHL ready.
And I know you were alluding to it off the top, how despite the fact the scouts all like Nugent Hopkins at number 1, that Edmonton is wavering, and I'm guessing that Larson is one of the guys simply because they need D that they're seriously considering taking at number 1. Remember, if he happens to jump Nugent Hopkins and go number 1, the only other Swede to do that was Matt Sundin.
Nifty deep by Jonathan Huberdeau. Huberdeau deep scores! Jonathan Huberdeau! Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? Do you believe it? Jonathan Huberdeau! A dandy! Nice move inside the back. Outside scores! Oh, Jonathan Huberdeau! Right to the front of the net, scores!
So this guy was the steady riser of the year, because back when we did your first initial preseason list in the fall, he was nowhere to be seen in your top 15. You even do some honorable mentions. He didn't even make the honorable mentions. What happened?
Well, he did not get a single vote from any of the 10 scouts we talked to before the junior hockey season started. But once the season started, it was a steady and quite dramatic increase over the course of the year. Jonathan Huberdeau has amazing vision. The hockey sense is the number 1 ability that he's got that separates him from so many other players. He's a very skillful guy. He sees the ice extremely well. He can make plays. He can score goals. And his sense of timing is tremendous. As the season wore on, to be able to score the goals that he did in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League playoffs where he was playoff MVP, to be the Memorial Cup MVP, when his team needed a goal, he has that rare ability to step up and create it, either himself or by dishing off to somebody else. And as the season wore along, he's legitimately in the mix with the elite of this group. He moved himself right into that class with Nugent Hopkins and Larson on merit. And he's a good skater. He's got to get more physically mature, but in the grand scheme of things, he's a tremendous offensive talent.
Sometimes stats are silly, sometimes they tell a story. His emergence, he only had 35 points in his rookie season, probably a main reason the scouts hadn't seen that much, and then 105 points to pop into Bob's top 3. Also, you saw him having some fun with the shootouts with the prospects. 11 for 13 in actual shootouts this year, which is always a bonus going to the National Hockey League.
Gabriel Landeskog has really jumped up the chart. He's got strength, he's got smarts, he's got skill.
Landeskog comes into the middle. There's the shot score!
Great move by Landeskog. Gabriel Landeskog, great little backhander. Gabriel Landeskog, the hero.
Landeskog is definitely trending in the right direction.
A lot of people think he's going to go in the top 5 in the NHL entry draft.
Yeah, Pierre said it, and then Bob is saying it now, that he's likely to go in the top 5. Our ranking at number 4. Is he the most NHL ready of the group we've talked about?
He's the most physically ready, the most NHL ready, and arguably the most complete prospect available in this draft. He is a man playing in a boys' league over the course of this season. Captain of the Kitchener Rangers. There isn't anything that this guy can't do or won't do to win a hockey game. He's fought 5 times in the Ontario Hockey League. He's a physical presence. He's a defensive presence. Steve Spott, the general manager and head coach of the Kitchener Rangers, calls him the Swedish equivalent of Mike Richards, except Mike Richards doesn't have the physical tools that this guy has in terms of being strong and being really physical. Mike Richards almost outruns his coverage in terms of being able to play a physical game, even though he's not got the prototypical power forward type body. Landeskog is a beast.
And we talked about it throughout the year. Such a rarity for a Swedish player to come over and play junior hockey in Canada. Oscar Moeller did it a few years ago, played in Chilliwack. The 52nd, he was picked by LA, so it will be Landeskog, surely the highest ranked Swedish player ever picked who came over and played his junior hockey here in Canada. Those are the top 4, the elite 4. Let's run down 5 through 10. I'll let you take it.
Well, James, Drummondville center Sean Couturier checks in at number 5. He started this season with a shot at being number 1 overall, but his game was not seen as dynamic enough for that honor, so he now looks like a guy whose stock appears to be dropping. But do note that 6 of 10 scouts still ranked him top 5 or better, and no scout we talked to had him lower than number 8. Niagara defenseman Dougie Hamilton is number 6. He has the size, skating, and passing ability to break into the top 5, and some scouts believe there's not a huge discrepancy between Hamilton and Larson for the label of best defenseman in this draft. Hamilton's Niagara teammate Ryan Strome is number 7. The offensively gifted center has tremendous one-on-one skills and is perceived as a better goal-scoring pivot than a playmaker. Kitchener defenseman Ryan Murphy checks in at number 8. The 5'10" blue liner is a one-dimensional offensive dynamo who's the highest-ranked wild card in this draft. Talented enough to justify a top 5 selection, but with enough question marks on his ability to play the 5-on-5 pro game that a top 10 selection is not necessarily guaranteed. Swedish center Mika Zibanejad is a strong physical two-way center whose game should translate well to the NHL, and like all the top 10 players on our list, being chosen in the top 5 is not out of the question. Swedish defenseman Jonas Brodin rounds out TSN's top 10. He's a marvelously mobile D-man who makes a tremendous first pass, but that should not be confused with him being a big, point-producing offensive blue liner.
I know they rolled by really quickly, so let's recap Bob's top 10. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at number 1. Adam Larsson, the defenseman from Sweden, at number 2. Jonathan Huberdeau, Quebec League playoff MVP, Memorial Cup MVP at number 3. Gabriel Landeskog, the first ever Euro captain of the Kitchener Rangers, at number 4. And Sean Couturier, who began the year as the co-favorite to go number 1 with Larson, so he slid a little bit. In fact, he's number 6 on the central scouting list of North American skaters. He is number 5 on Bob's overall list. As far as 6 through 10, Dougie Hamilton, 3rd in the OHL as far as D-man scoring. Ryan Strome, Bobby talked about, terrific playmaker, also a prolific tweeter. He will join us on our countdown show on Thursday. Murphy at Kitchener, the best defenseman at the World Under-18s. Zibanejad and Jonas Brodin